Not a normal show, not a normal subject. Obviously, a really difficult situation to broach on a lighthearted show such as this, but we will jump into the John Trudeau arrest for possession of child pornography here on episode 237 of Coast to Coast Pinball. Let's go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. My name is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast. It's a commentary. I'm a man out of quarters. Thanks for listening. Welcome. Had a show sketched out, and it was not this one. So, as I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are aware of the news if you look at the pinball internet and the universe of pinball on the web, Pinside, Facebook, other forums. John Trudeau, current designer of pinball machines for Stern Pinball, formerly Bally Williams, formerly Gottlieb, formerly, I think we can go all the way back to Game Plan, has been arrested with charges of 2 counts of child pornography possessions in Illinois. The press release hit the internet a couple days ago. It was texted to me about 2 hours after it hit the internet, and I was, I think like everybody else, kind of shocked, kind of like, oh man, that is insane news. Not good news either. So I guess first of all, I should probably take a good glance at the official news article as reported by the Chicago Sun-Times. It basically states a West Suburban man was arrested Thursday after investigators found child pornography at his Glendale Heights home. Led detectives to 69-year-old John T. Trudeau. According to Glendale Heights police, they executed a search warrant at his home. They seized computer equipment containing child pornography, police said. Trudeau, who was present during the search, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of possession of child pornography. He's currently being held at the DuPage County Jail pending a bond hearing. I have no further information if that bond hearing took place on Friday. If he made bond, was released, still in jail, don't know. This is a tough one for a hobby to talk about. I mean, there's the knee-jerk reaction that I think most of us, everybody has, of, oh man, it's horrible. It's one of the worst things you could hear someone being a part of. Exploitation of anyone, exploitation of a child is awful. Child pornography is a tough one to even go research because you don't even want to type the words into your search bar. It's bad. It's not good. It's not good, the whole situation. I want to try and be as level-headed about this subject on this show as I can be. I feel like we talk so much about pinball, it would be silly not to talk about this situation as it has reverberations on the pinball business world, certainly, with him currently designing games at Stern. It has ramifications on the collector's world because he designed a lot of games over the years, some very, obviously highly coveted games. He's someone that many people who listen to the show have met, have gotten autographs and pictures with. He's been a prominent figure out at the pinball, events, shows, which, as we've seen pinball sort of come roaring back over the last, 4, 5, 6 years, the shows have been a big part of that, and the designers have become celebrities, more so than they were, even in the past. It's become a big deal to go meet the designers, tell them how much you appreciate their work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It poses all sorts of interesting problems for pinball manufacturers, and we'll dive into that here on episode 237 of Coast to Coast Pinball. This is a sticky one. I don't love getting into it. It's tough because I pride myself in trying to keep an open mind to the world and trying to rely on some tenets of the justice system and the world that I grew up in the United States. I truly do believe in innocent until proven guilty. However, I am also a realist, and I try and think logically when I approach situations. And from what I have read in the past couple days about this situation and others like it, this isn't good. I'm not sitting here holding out hope that, this is just a big misunderstanding, because when you really read the laws surrounding these types of crimes, and if you start thinking about just the world as it is, with the internet as it is, and how many people are on their computer every day, and the rise of popularity of online, adult content is massive. Some of the biggest websites in the world are adult-oriented content. So knowing that that's out there, and the rise in the way people can be somewhat anonymous on the internet, and the ease of information flow and the transfer of files, of photos, of videos, of audio files like you're listening to right now, how easy it is to spread it anywhere around the world. It's a huge, huge nest of people. If you start looking at pornography just as a whole, it's massive. And certainly if you read and do a little bit of reading, you start kind of having this sick feeling of like, man, child pornography is really bigger than you would have hoped. And it's a problem. And you just don't get the idea that a lot of accidents happen like this. This isn't some accident where the police knocked on the wrong door and grabbed the wrong guy. I mean, they had a search warrant to go to this man's house. They searched his computer. They found what they were thinking they were going to find, and they made the arrest. Obviously, it is all pending some sort of trial and or ruling by the state of Illinois. I believe these are state-leveled crimes. Child pornography is both a state offense in all 50 states in the United States and also a federal offense. You can be charged both by the federal government and by the state government. So I'm not sitting here thinking, maybe he's going to get out of this. I don't think so. That doesn't seem to line up in my head. And this is all just my opinion. I'm not a legal expert, but this is bad. I was debating whether or not to talk about this particular thing that I'm just going to go ahead and talk about, because it's sort of a fuzzy thing in my head, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. If you remember back about 4 years ago when John was hired by Stern, and I think it surprised some people that Stern did hire John, because they had been sort of, in this cost-cutting era at Stern, and the successes they were having, and George Gomez moving into more of a leadership role, prompted the need for more designers. And John's older. John's 69 years old today, so he came to Stern at roughly 65 years old. And that's when a lot of people are retiring. But John was starting his new career at Stern Pinball, designing games again. So there was a lot of talk on the internet. And I cannot remember exactly where I read what I'm about to tell you, but I know 100% sure I read it because I actually brought it up to somebody months and months, maybe even a year or more later, in a conversation that was completely unrelated. This just came up out of nowhere. In a thread, either on a web forum or on Facebook. It was one of those, either a pinball web forum, likely Pinside, or his Facebook. In the thread, talking about John Trudeau either being hired by Stern or possibly when Mustang came out, maybe. I've looked, I cannot find this thread. It was probably removed, or it's just I can't find it now years later. There was a post in a thread about John Trudeau, and I'm 100% sure that this was there, because I wouldn't misremember this. But somebody was posting in a very positive thread about John Trudeau, where people were either thrilled that he was back in pinball and working for Stern, or thrilled about Mustang, or something like that. Somebody, rather anonymously, wasn't a poster that I knew or anybody seemed to know, somebody with very low post count, somebody made a post in that thread that I think most viewed as trolling or inflammatory or as just crazy person on the internet. And the post basically said, and I'm totally paraphrasing a memory that I am stretching to try and sort out the actual details on, somebody made accusations towards John Trudeau in a post that basically implied, yeah, good for you, John. I still remember what you did, and you should too, something involving children. And I know that that's kind of weird to say now, hearing this now. It's stuck in my head because of the tone of the post. I know what trolling looks like on the internet. I know what it looks like when people are trying to get a rise out of someone. Look, I get it myself. I get emails sometimes that are just absolutely sent to me to try and make me angry or just take a shot at me for whatever reason. I know what that looks like. I also know, at least I think I know, what a post looks like when there's something very, raw and real there. And this post stuck with me because I brought it up to somebody later on in a weird conversation that I couldn't ever talk about on the show because it was just one of those, riffing conversations about things, and probably I'd be embarrassed to even have that conversation in front of a lot of people. But I was talking about something and I said, hey, I actually remember somebody saying something about John on the internet that kind of creeped me out. Do you know anything about that? And the person I said this to had no idea. I've brought this up to a couple people in the last couple days saying, hey, you don't happen to remember this? And everyone's like, no way, that's crazy. Like, no, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm absolutely sure. Somebody posted something about John in regards to something he should not have done, either with a child or with child pornography or with something along these lines. And what can you do about it then? Of course, nothing. It's just something some random person said on the internet. You can't, what do you do? It makes me feel super weird right now that I knew that or saw that, but I didn't know anything. It was just a random thing. I don't know John. I've spoken to John for a total of 2 minutes in my entire life. But this post just had the air of like, I don't know, man. It just had this thing of like, it felt too real, the way it was worded, the way it had, maybe had details in it. I don't remember, and I've looked, but I can't find it. So the second I saw this press release on the Chicago Sun-Times, this news note here about John being arrested, that's the first thing I thought. That was like literally, bam, right in front of my mind. It's like, oh my gosh. So that is also why I'm sitting here not ringing the bell of innocent till proven guilty, due process, blah, 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 blah. Because, man, it just makes me feel funny. Like, it just doesn't, it all lines up in a way that's pretty uncomfortable and bad. I have my own thoughts on people with, people with mental problems, whether it's, actual diagnosed, mental disease. I tend to be in the camp believing that people who are somehow into things involving children, or other things that would be outside of the kind of the social norms that we have in our world today are probably sick, are probably mentally, damaged, hurt. I know if you read a lot about what drives people to this, there's lots of cases of abuse. There's that vicious cycle of abuse into more abuse. And that's why I think a lot of people have decided over the years that we do need to try and segregate people who, take advantage of victims like children. And we need to segregate them somehow with, lengthy prison sentences, sex offender registries, et cetera, et cetera. And I fully support that. I wish our world was better at trying to help people and like fix their broken brains. Because I really think you have to have a broken brain to be a 69-year-old man and be looking at something that's truly what we're all thinking of when we say child pornography. Now, I get a little worried about some of this. My open-minded liberal head starts thinking, wait a minute, I've read ridiculous stories of like 19-year-old men going to jail for having pictures of their 17-year-old girlfriend on their phone. And I sort of have a problem with putting somebody behind bars for years for that. That I'm sorry. I don't have a 17-year-old daughter. Maybe that would change my way of viewing. But I know what I felt like when I was 19. I was not a predator if I didn't date a 17-year-old. But if I had, I don't know. That to me is different. Hate me if you want for that. But so I have fearful that. But at the same time, when the police go with a search warrant to a specific house, to a specific person, to a 69-year-old man, and they find what they're looking for, and they charge him with 2 counts of child pornography possession, I'm pretty far along the path of, okay, this guy screwed up big time and has issues and probably needs help and probably needs to not have access to these things, because just seeking out something like this, just seeking out images, videos, whatever, exploiting a child, helps create a marketplace for that type of material, which is incredibly dangerous and an incredible menace to society everywhere. Because oftentimes this stuff is created in third world countries where there's even less support for a child in between the margins, and you create this economy or this community that's somehow glorifying this garbage, and it somehow could normalize to a group that could be feeling anonymous on the internet. And that's really, really dangerous, because I would rather have one adult person who engages in this sort of crime, spend a bunch of time in jail, than to err on the side of caution and give benefit of the doubt and create one more opportunity for a young person to be taken advantage of, whose then life could be completely changed and ruined because somebody else is already broken. And it's super complicated, and I don't feel totally comfortable talking about it, but it's not okay, and the world needs to figure out how to stop it, how to try and help people through these issues. I think I'm not the guy who says, all criminals should be shot in the head and dumped in the ocean. I'm not that guy. I'm fairly anti-death penalty. In fact, I'm totally anti-death penalty. But I'm also really logical in the fact if someone's a danger to society, which I think anybody who's seeking out this type of stuff is a danger to society, that person shouldn't be allowed to roam around in society. So I guess that's how does it make me feel? How does I feel? I wasn't incredibly, quote, sad. I started a lot of people saying it's a sad day for pinball, and that's fine if you feel sad about this. I just felt sort of off. It just was like, man, because here's what's also sort of weird about this. If John Trudeau hadn't ever designed a pinball machine and was doing this and got arrested and got caught, would anybody even notice? His family probably would notice. His neighbors might notice. Maybe some people who had met him and saw the article online might notice. But you wouldn't have a community like the pinball community notice and focus in on it. And that's actually kind of weird to me that people every day are getting arrested with this. If you just search this stuff, it's sickeningly, can't even say the word, all over the place. And there's a lot of it. And a lot of it just, you don't think about it because you don't know the person. But we all know, quote, know John Trudeau through the games he's designed and the work he's done in this hobby, in this business, in this community that if you're listening to this, you're a part of. And it's interesting. So it's made me feel off. And, we immediately started, the people I was chatting about this with immediately started talking about, like, well, what does this mean for the games? If you take it back to pinball, okay, so we've got pinball, and John's, been a big part of pinball design over the years. And there's been, if you look at the list of games, obviously the 3 games he's done with Stern, Ghostbusters, Mustang, WrestleMania. Ghostbusters is still shipping all over the country right now. It's making money out on route. It's been a very successful route game for people who are operators. What does it mean there? Does anybody, not play John Trudeau games out in the field? Do people not buy Stern games now? Yeah, there will be people who won't. I've already read reports of people taking games off route or selling games or not buying games, canceling orders. I don't own a John Trudeau pinball machine. I have in the past. If I was sitting in this room looking at one of his games, I think I would feel, as part of this community, some sort of, I don't know, I would feel some sort of need to want to purge and get rid of it right now. I don't know if that'll pass after time, because a pinball machine is not the sum of one man's vision and ideas. Even a game like, a game that's a home-built game, generally there's been somebody else to do the work and help. Not always. There's probably some boutique games built by one person, but certainly any mass-produced pinball machine has, art design, sound design, mechanical design, engineering, marketing, all this other stuff that goes into. So when you look at Ghostbusters Pro, that's not a John Trudeau product. That's a Stern pinball product. So does Stern take the full hit for something that one of their employees has been accused of and could be, possibly found guilty of? I don't know. Maybe they do. I wouldn't blame anybody in the pinball community, especially someone who's really active in collecting and knowing the people. I wouldn't blame anybody who thinks, I just don't want that game in my house now. I don't want to support that. It's a stand I'm going to take. I totally get that. It's not going to affect the the casual person who doesn't know the names of the designers and doesn't know when each game was released and how many flippers on each game, doesn't know the difference between the Pro and the Premium and the Limited Edition, that just happens to enjoy pinball from time to time and says, "Oh, look, new a Ghost," and they call them tables. Those people, the people that call pinball machines tables, probably won't affect those people. Like, oh, I like that table. Okay, well, you probably don't know who John Trudeau is. So that person will probably still put their quarters, their euros, their Swedish krona into a Ghostbusters Pro and not think twice and just enjoy the game, because Stern built a product that they can enjoy. You know, what if there was a guy who designed the architecture of some car? Say, for instance, hypothetically, the guy who designed the Honda Civic was caught and convicted of child pornography charges. Would you never buy a Honda Civic? Well, you probably wouldn't know, right? You probably would never know, but we do know in this community, in this pinball community, this group of us who are really into this, who think about pinball all the time, who play pinball all the time, who make friends through pinball, people who fell in love over pinball, people hate each other through pinball, be nice to each other. But we do know who John is, and we do know what he's being accused of, and it will make us feel differently about some of the games that he worked on. So I don't blame anybody. What does Stern do here? They have a game designed and getting awfully close by John Trudeau. The internet sure seems to think they know what game it is. I don't have any confirmed inside information, but I think the internet is generally wrong. But that game's coming up. And Stern's put a lot of money and time and effort into it. Stern's a business. So they have to now weigh the cost of moving forward with a game designed by someone who's under incredible scrutiny for these incredibly horrible accusations, who very well could be found guilty, convicted, or admit to guilt of these accusations. We will see. That will all happen over the next weeks, months. Do they want to put a product that the pinball community is all going to know was designed by somebody who is in that camp, you know? Or do they decide, look, we're taking his name off of it, he won't be used to promote the game, but it's a Stern pinball design, we have spent this much money, time, effort, we stand behind the product, and if you don't want to buy it, we understand, don't buy it. That's like a scale you have to weigh. I think here on like day 3 of thinking about this, I think, especially with, you know, the amount of games they're building right now, and I don't know what their sales are like right now. I don't know the demand levels. But I think if I'm sitting in a room with the folks at Stern, the good people of Stern, if I was there, which almost was there, crazy, I would be going into the meeting Monday morning saying, delay it, redesign it, get a team on it, let's change it, and let's tell the story. Let's be really open about it. Let's say we have this game. It was designed by John. We think that the pinball community is going to appreciate a redesign, and we're going to bump this game back. I would lean that way. I would be as transparent as I could. I'd say, look, we think this is horrible. John is suspended based on these charges. We'll see what happens in court. I think that's kind of the fair answer from an employer. I don't know. They can do what they want. But I would say his next project is on hold. We're going to look at it. We may make some changes. We'd like to, and if John is found guilty of these charges, I think Stern, if they don't want to scrap the game, which they may not want to, I almost wouldn't scrap it because I wouldn't want to create this big, like, oh, what about the game John designed that never came out? I wouldn't want that. I would get Steve Ritchie on it. I'd get John Borg on it, get Keith Elwin on it. And I'd say, what can we do to this thing? What can we change here? How could we make this a Stern game and not a John Trudeau game and move forward? That's probably what I would do. That would be my thing. I wouldn't want to forge ahead and just try and put blinders on and say, no, people will know. People will know. And I wouldn't want to have to go up against that, especially when you have other games designed and more games coming. You've got Vault editions you could do. There's lots of other things to do right now. I wouldn't push forward with this, and it'll be interesting to see how they choose to react. What does this do for you? What does this do for you, friendly listener of Coast to Coast Pinball, who some of you I'm sure own John Trudeau games. Some of you probably operate them en route. Some of you probably play them in your leagues, play them in your trips to shows. Are you going to walk up to your Bride of Pinbot and feel the same about it tomorrow? I don't know. Are you gonna, still covet that Spirit machine that you just thought was the coolest looking game ever? Alien Star. You still looking for that $1,000 Alien Star out there? I don't know. It's an interesting question. Time will tell. I think certainly this will fade in people's consciousness at some point, and pinball machines are fun and there for enjoyment. And I think if I just were to play this out over time, there will be people who will never forget this, and probably will never own a John Trudeau machine. And there'll also be people who will say, you know what, look, Judge Dredd is a Bally Williams game, and I'm going to own this game. And yeah, I know that John did bad things, and I'm not gonna be a part of it. It's tough because there are other people who've been convicted of really heinous crimes, bad crimes, sexual assault. I'm stretching for someone who's been convicted of a child pornography charge that's been really big in the entertainment world or something. But I'm sure there's one of them. I think Roman Polanski comes to mind, although I don't remember if he was actually convicted. But certainly, I think you can look that story up and decide what you think. Woody Allen. Do you watch Woody Allen movies? I think that's an interesting one. I watch Woody Allen movies, and sometimes I think I shouldn't. It's a weird one, and I don't know. It's a difficult thing. Usually, I find myself able to separate someone's work from the person. I think I can do it because I don't know if anybody. I've probably told the story in the show or not. I don't know. I'm a huge Ryan Adams fan, the musician. I really, really like Ryan Adams' music. I've met him twice, and both times, terrible interactions with the guy. Like, bad. Like if he had just been random dude I had met in person, I would have walked away from that and gone, what a flipping expletive. But it's Ryan Adams, so like you're trying to be like, okay, well, people say, oh, you got to give celebrities the benefit of the doubt. Look, I've met enough famous people to know when people are just jerks. I think Ryan Adams is kind of a jerk. But I really like his music. So I go see the guy in concert. I love his music. It connects with me. The art connects, but he's a jerk. I don't know. That's tough. I think the lines get drawn, and this is certainly a line that's going to get drawn a lot firmer for a lot of people. And I don't blame him. I don't blame you at all. So when you look at the details of the laws, it's interesting. Looking at what could happen to John here. A lot of people, I think, hear child pornography and maybe they've never looked at it and haven't, excuse me, it's not what I mean, never looked at the legal side of child pornography, thank you, and don't understand, people I think, oh, you're in jail for the rest of your life. Well, actually, that's probably not the case. Based on the 2 charges of possession of child pornography, the state of Illinois classes child pornography all as felonies, but they have different levels of felonies. A class 1 felony is a 4 to a 15-year prison sentence. Class 3 felony is usually 2.5 to 5 years. Then they have something called a class X felony, which tends to stem from what's called aggravated child pornography charges. Aggravated usually means the people in the materials were under the age of 13. That will give you aggravated child pornography charges, and that's a Class X felony, which has much heavier sentences, up to 30 years, sometimes 60 years. There's also the federal side of this. So I was reading about some cases in the state of Illinois to try and see kind of what happens to these people, and I read one law office's blog about their clients, and they had a client. I'll give you this example here. The counts were broken down with 14 counts of aggravated child pornography, Class X, 6 to 30 years. 1 count, possession of child pornography, Class 1 felony, 4 to 15 years. 16 counts, possession of child pornography, Class 2, which carries 3 to 7 years sentences, and then 3 counts of possession of child pornography, Class 3, 2 to 5 years. So this person was looking at years and years, lifetimes in prison if convicted on all counts. And his law office worked with the state. And this guy with those counts, 34 counts across 4 different felony classes, he ended up with 6 months in prison, long-time house arrest, and fines. So that is your legal system at work, for better or for worse. and it'll be interesting to see how severe these felony levels will be charged to John Trudeau, and whether he pleads innocent, pleads guilt, works with the state, goes to trial, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Time will tell. So, yeah, I don't know. That's my stake. I think if there's anything good to come out of this, I would encourage people to be vigilant on, people that might, I don't know. If you see something, say something, I guess. This sounds all dramatic all of a sudden, but it's a really serious one, so it's just how I feel. Don't always assume you know someone is a good one too. But interesting times, and interesting how this serious of a crime can infiltrate into a hobby like pinball when someone is this close to it. So I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and go on and on and on about this. I just had to address it, needed to address it, and talk about it, because I think it is it's a bad time when people are exploited. It's horrible, and I hope that we as a people work around the world to stop things like this and stop this from happening, and to stamp it out. And if that means throwing people behind bars, so be it. Good. And if we can figure out a way to try and help these people realize that that's not okay, and it's a problem, and there's mental sicknesses involved, I wish we could do more of that, because I don't think, my guess is that putting someone in jail for 6 months and then letting them back out with access to the internet in the world is probably not going to fix the problem. So anyway, that's episode 237 of Coast to Coast Pinball. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk about something a little bit better next time. Take care.